around the world. When Trumka asked the official how long this process of leveling out might take, he answered, about 3 to 5 generations. That's a century in the lives of the communities and the people in question. Is it any wonder, then, that the average American worker is skeptical of technocratic elites from both parties who see people not as human beings, but as mathematical inputs on a spreadsheet? Is it a surprise that we've had, for the last decade or so, the most polarized political environment in the history of the United States? Or an attempted coup in our capital? Or an opioid crisis and an epidemic of deaths of despair among people who feel forgotten by the powers that be? Or a generation of young millennials now making up the largest voting and working bloc in the country who are increasingly disenchanted with both capitalism and liberal democracy and inclined to side with more extreme political elements within either party? Or a population at large that feels that globalization itself has failed? A 2019 Pew Research Center study found that many people in the United States and the United Kingdom had negative feelings about it, associating it with loss, longing, and a feeling of being left behind or swept up. It's not just feelings, but metrics that tell us that, by some key measures, globalization has failed. While globalization has made the planet wealthier as a whole, that wealth has been concentrated largely at the very top, among financial and managerial elites who own the most assets, and to a certain extent at the very bottom. Wages grew in developing countries, particularly China. Within most countries, however, inequality has also grown. Huge areas in many nations, rich and poor, have been hollowed out economically or environmentally degraded or left behind politically by globalization. The reaction has been widespread populism, nationalism, and the rise of autocracy in many parts of the world, an indicator that something in the system desperately needs tweaking. One key part of the problem has been the mainstream economics taught in universities and business schools over the past 40 years. It is what supported the just-in-time business culture in which redundancy in supply chains was considered a waste of time and money, and in which the free flow of capital, goods, and labor across borders to create more economic growth was always considered a good thing, despite any inequality or financial fragility it might create. The idea that there might be human costs to efficiency, or that these costs might come with their own snowball cycle of political or economic risks, was simply not considered. COVID-19, of course, ripped the scales from our eyes with regard to such assumptions. Suddenly, it mattered that we sourced the majority of our cheap medical masks or key pharmaceutical ingredients from our biggest geopolitical adversary, China. It mattered that we lived in a country with a bifurcated healthcare system and spotty broadband coverage. It mattered that our economy was built on debt and asset bubbles rather than on income growth from good jobs. The pandemic and its aftermath have also driven home an important message that policymakers are finally beginning to heed. If we are to solve the world's biggest problems, from pandemics and climate change to the inequities of globalization, then economists must stop tweaking the edges of their models and, instead, think outside the box. Our elected officials and business leaders, too, must begin to think in far more nuanced terms about what exactly constitutes economic well-being, not just at a global level, but at a local one, too. A new equilibrium. Any economy regularly goes through cycles of expansion and contraction, boom and bust. But the most important of these cycles has little to do with market prices or unemployment rates. It's about a fundamental sense of economic well-being, and that is far less a matter of short-term data than of an underlying political philosophy, one that addresses the 3 core questions all societies must face. What matters? Who matters? And how should society reflect those interests? The exact calibration is never set like some article in the U.S. Constitution. It shifts.